Shalom, family. Today I want to talk about hypocrisy, something that kind of makes its way around the world on a daily basis. I want to talk about children of different racial backgrounds. Now, there were three very tragic incidents that occurred here in America that were publicized and brought to the forefront. The first I'm going to talk about is the little boy who fell into the gorilla enclosure. And then there was a little boy who was by the water, and an alligator got the little boy and carried him away and killed him. And then there was an incident where two 3-year-old children suffocated inside of a vehicle. Okay, now anyone who follows the news a lot, you know that all three incidents were very tragic. You know the racial background of all three incidents of the children. Okay, now what I'm going to be talking about is not per se the incidents themselves, because you could just Google them and they will come up and you can get all the details. Now, enough about those stories. What I'm going to talk about now is the hypocrisy. I'm going to talk about the hypocrisy. Now, anyone who is a parent could say that every last incident was not only frightening, but very tragic for all of the parents involved, right? But the difference here, in which the world has seen it very clearly, with one incident, only one of them, you had petitions going up all over the internet, you had outrage, you had anger, you had threats, death threats, and all types of violent language and all types of hateful speech aimed at not just the child, but the child's parents as well. They were calling for the arrest of the parents. They also wanted the parents to be investigated. They wanted them to be prosecuted and charged for the animal that had to be put down to save the child. Okay? I don't even have to tell you which one it was in that case, but we all know that the internet was swarming and jumping and just pounding with angry venom coming from people who said that the parents and the child should have been killed and not the animal. You see, now the hypocrisy is this. Now, even though that incident was very tragic, thankfully the child was all right, only sustained minor injuries, okay? But the possibility of death was there. The animal threw the child up against the wall. One witness said, we saw the animal dragging the child through the water by the child's legs. And despite all of this evidence that this huge animal was a threat to that child, you still had angry mobs of people who had the same mentality from back in the day when they wanted blood, you see. Now, when you have the other incidents happen where the one child was killed by the alligator and the other two children suffocated inside of a hot vehicle, there was this outcry of emotion and support for the parents, in which we totally understand that, because they lost their children, okay? They lost their children. But there was no calling. In the first incident, too, I want to mention this for those of you who don't know, the father of the child wasn't even at the place, wasn't even involved in the incident in any way, shape, or form whatsoever, okay? But you had him being investigated. They felt the need to investigate his past and publicize his past all over the internet. They wanted the whole world to know that the father, years ago, had some incidents or run-ins with the law. But you see, in recent years, he's cleaned up his life, he's gotten himself together, he did his time, and he's raising a beautiful family. But the media swarm mob, lynch mob, still wanted blood, you see. Now, even though the child survived in that incident, many wished that the child was the one who died. Now, in these other two cases, which were very tragic as well, we didn't see a lynch mob. We didn't see petitions, you know. Now, in one case, I believe 4 or 5 alligators had to be put down. who had absolutely nothing to do with the incident or the death of the child. I don't know if they actually caught the one who killed the child, but there were 4 or 5 animals in that case that had to be put down as well. We didn't see any swarming petitions for the parents to have to pay for the animals that were killed. We didn't see any petitions for the arrest of the parents or the prosecution of the parents. We didn't see anyone pulling any background checks on the father. We didn't see all of this hateful venom saying that the parents or the child, well, in this case the child did die, which is very tragic, but we didn't see anyone saying that the parents should be killed or anything like that. So if you can't see hypocrisy in this, if you can't see hypocrisy, then you are willfully ignorant. You are a person who wants to be hateful and bigoted, and you want to be the one who says, well, no, you're bigoted for talking about it. Why are we even discussing this? Well, it has to be discussed because for so long, things have been swept under the carpet, and that's where you all like to keep it. But the minute something such as this shows its head, and we're talking about incidents that were within weeks of each other, okay? Even with the incident where the children died in the hot car. It was said that the mother was asleep in the house and the 2 children died in the car, okay? Was there an investigation? I don't know. Will there be a prosecution? I doubt it because they're not even talking about that. But there is an outcrying of support and emotion for the parents. Rightfully so, but where is the background check on the parents? Where is the call that they should be held responsible for what happened to their children? Where is the call, the petitions being signed for neglect and prosecution and all of this other stuff? Now, again, we are talking about hypocrisy, and you have large segments of the population in the world who cannot even see or don't even realize that they are hypocrites, reprobates, hateful, double-standarded. I know that's probably not a word, but I'm using it right here. Full of double standards and full of one law for our people and a whole different set of laws for your people. Sympathy over here, we don't care over here. Support the parents, even if they were neglectful over here, but over here, put them to death or put them in jail. You can't see. Many precedents have been set to prove what I'm talking about, okay? This is not something that I'm making up or pulling out of thin air. I mean, throughout the South, in the early 1900s, there were so many cases where there will be little to no evidence against so-called black people, but that was all that was needed to prosecute them and send them to jail for sometimes the rest of their lives for simple infractions. And many times they were accused of things that they never did, weren't even capable of doing, like the little boy, I believe his name was George Stinney, 14 years old, didn't even do the crime, but he paid with his life because that's the way the system functioned. And guess what? The system still functions that way because you have the descendants of these same people who passed such hateful judgments back then still in power today, and they still have family that supports their every decision. You see, now, every time I do a video where I'm talking about these things, I get a slew of people, okay, who can't stand it so much and they say that I'm hateful. I like to talk about this and I like to point this out because when you're dealing with a group of hypocrites like this, it gets so obvious to the rest of the world because other people read these comments too. They read these comments, and I've had people from this particular racial group actually message me and apologize for this ignorance. Because if you are harmed in any way, you have a right to talk about things. If your people are harmed in any way by a system that was built to destroy them, you have a right to talk about it. But in the minds of people that are reprobate, you need to be quiet and know your place. You see, it's very sad and unfortunate, but this is the world we live in. And The only thing that will fix this will be divine intervention, because when you have a heart that is desperately wicked, in which a lot of people in the world do, there is nothing that can be said to this person or to this group of people that will change that, because the scripture tells you that the heart is desperately wicked. And we can look around the world and see, we know what has taken place all around the world. For centuries, you've had this worldwide raping of indigenous women. You've had genocides, you've had enslavements, you've had land thieves and land that has been stolen, resources that have been stolen, people, whole groups of people wiped out, completely wiped out by murder and slaughter. You've had the earth literally destroyed. I mean, I'm talking from the drilling, the fracking, the sewage systems, all of these systems that you see in place, all of the stuff that you see taking place in the world, all of the war. You could really put your finger on the source of all of this. But that same source, or that same group of people, always like to talk about what this group is doing or what that group is doing on a local scale or a statewide scale, or even a national scale, nationwide scale. But they don't like to talk about what they do on a worldwide scale, in which anything else that other people do or other groups do pales in comparison. But they love to use percentages and numbers and say, well, you represent this amount of the national population, but you represent this amount in crime. But when you apply their same logic on a worldwide scale, they represent this much on a worldwide scale in terms of population, but this much of the crimes, all of the stuff I mentioned, the worldwide raping of indigenous black women, the torturing, murdering, slaughtering of whole groups of people, the destroying of the land, the stealing of resources, the stealing of land. We all know who the culprits are. But again, when you have spin doctors, you're going to have hypocrisy. They want to put this family in jail and prison over the death of this animal and the near injuring of their child, but nothing for the parents over here. Nothing but sympathy. Not saying that they don't deserve sympathy because they lost a child, but I'm just saying the hypocrisy shows when you have all these petitions going up and all of these death threats and all of these cries for financial accountability in one case, but not in the others. So people chew on that. It's a hard pill to swallow, but it's the truth. And that's why the world is going to be in for a rude awakening, because many people have a strong delusion that swirls around up here, and they want to say that we have the strong delusion because we are speaking truth. But what's going on is, when you have a reprobate mind, you cannot connect to the truth. So when you hear the truth, it actually frustrates you and angers you, and it makes you want to lash out at the person who's actually speaking the truth. Some people actually look at you and they can't stand you, and they want you to just shut up, because they know that if the truth begins to bubble up more and more and more, that the lies are going to be squashed. And with that, I will say shalom to my people.